everybody. Welcome back to our show. This is All Things Autism and More. My name is Patricia, and I'm here with Irene and Claire. And ladies, this is Autism Awareness Month, Autism Acceptance Month in some places. And this is, advocacy, awareness, acceptance. The entire subject of autism is what this show is about. So, of course, we had to have a celebratory episode, or at least an episode that is dedicated to this month, because this is what we're all about. So, ladies, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Patricia.
The reason I welcome you today as my special guests, and really, we are all special guests, is because we are actually the champions of this fight, this advocacy for autism in Uganda. This year, for the Autism Acceptance Month, the focus is on the sustainable development goals in the areas of people with autism. So enabling people with autism to access employment and therefore reduce poverty, access education, and all the different SDGs and how they apply to people with autism. I think for us, the question is, are we there yet? Are we there yet as a country, as a community? Are we really there yet as in the area of autism acceptance? But before we get there, maybe to just come back to the grassroots of all of this for us. Ladies, what are your experiences, if you could share some, with the awareness of autism? Have you had about it through other channels besides the obvious ones that you're already involved in? Do you have any experiences you would like to share with us? What things have you done as a center? Because you also represent Hannah Center, which is in Naguru. What does Hannah Center do in terms of advocacy and letting people know about autism? So I don't know who will go first. I don't know if Claire will speak or Irene before Claire. But
I think let Claire go first and then I'll follow.
Wow. Yes, it's Autism Awareness Month, and as Hannah Center, so the center was born out of an organization that Irene, together with Irene and some two other people, I think,
Yes.
we set up a nonprofit, which is called Hannah's Home for Autism and Special Education. And I would say initially one of our key objectives was to raise awareness and advocate for individuals, not even just children, living with autism. And I think in trying to do all that, we realized that before you even get there, there's a lot of awareness work that has to happen. So I'm a special education teacher. That's what I call myself, Miss Claire. I'm a teacher. And I realized that even getting into the education spaces, there's a lot of misinformation. One, there's also a lack of understanding of what autism is. And then that leads into a lack of knowledge, really, and awareness on how to handle children. So I'm giving that as a background to how the center then was born. So the center, it's not a school, but rather a holistic learning center where the purpose or the aim is, the objective is to equip a child from the early years with the necessary skills, whether they get back and integrate into a regular school or they continue on a journey of just skills acquisition at the different points in life. And I think as a center, that's really the objective. It's giving them the skills for daily living. What do they need? I know occupational therapy, they'll say ADLs, activities of daily living, daily life. But it's more holistic. So it's occupational therapy, it's speech therapy, it's consulting, even just advice with behavioral management. It's advice with even understanding. I don't want to call it counseling because we're not trained counselors, but
Yeah.
even providing a sounding board for a parent who's struggling and saying, look, this is where I'm at. So we do all that as Hannah Center. We have started a small social media activism on Instagram, on X, formerly Twitter, on LinkedIn, a few articles here and there. And I think in this year, we will drive more of that in terms of trying to create more, what can I call them, snippets of information to create awareness. What is autism? What does stimming look like? When you see somebody stimming, don't say they're weird or beat them or stop it. So just to create those small awarenesses, when you see somebody, be mindful, this is what's happening. So I'd say that from my standpoint as being the one really handling things at the center, that's what we have tried to do and continue to do and to build on. But what I can say is that there's still a big need for awareness. We are not yet at acceptance as a society. Even within us, the land community, the awareness is limited. The stigma is still getting in the way. But I'll let Irene speak.
Yeah, so just like Claire has said it, Hannah's home was birthed from the need, the thirst to create this awareness. And that came from a space of where the challenges I faced as a parent back in the day, where there was hardly anything. There was hardly any like speech therapy center or special education center specialized for our children. It was mainly you would hear about the school of the handicapped, school of the blind, but our children were misplaced. There was no place to place them. And we felt like there was a big gap there. We have really transitioned since then. Many other centers have come up, fortunately. But like Claire mentioned, there's still a lot more to be done. Because now we're looking at, there's many centers for the early years, but now for the more advanced years, we still have a lot of work to do. So there's still a lot that we need to do. But also as individuals in our very own spaces, we stand as advocates. When I'm in the workplace, I'll speak about it and create that awareness. I'll not be afraid to talk about my child being on the spectrum because I do not know how many other people it may help. So we'll have to keep talking about it and creating more and more of that awareness. In the education space, we are seeing mostly the international schools that are embracing this, but now we also need to see a lot more of that in the other school settings because not every parent will afford to take their child to a school, an international school. So what about these other schools? So that advocacy is still required. We need to bring it to a place where everybody accepts and understands, and there's something specialized for them. And maybe later in the future, we'll also now go into the spaces of employment for such people.
Yes.
Just like lately they are doing employment for the handicapped and the disabled. We also want to hear more of employment for our children or our people with autism in the workspaces. So yeah, I think there's a lot more that we need to do to keep driving this.
Thank you. I think I guess now what I'm wondering is, do you feel like we have do you see any changes between then when Yona was diagnosed with autism and you are, because like you said, you didn't really have access to many centers and now there are and stuff. Do you hear the topic of autism being spoken of a lot more now. Would you agree that maybe the society has opened up a little more to the idea of autism as opposed to before? Or do you think that as a community we are still at like that grassroots level where people still they are still like it's still such a foreign idea, it's still such a new concept to them? I don't know what your thoughts are on where we are as a country, basically. Especially, I guess I will ask from the parents' perspective, but I'll start with the school education perspective. When you're interacting with parents and they come to you, do they come to you in this angazi form of like, I don't know what's happening and what, or do they have an idea of what's happening?
I think that's it's an interesting question, and I would say there are different levels of parents. There's some who embrace it early on, and they'll say, yes, the child, I noticed at this point, the behavior changed, and we've done X, Y, Z, we've been deliberate, we've been intentional. So there's that group of parents that are more accepting. They've probably even diagnosed it before they've gotten an official medical diagnostics. And so they've embraced it. They're being intentional in maybe feeding the child, maybe what they're doing at home, the interventions they themselves are doing before putting them in the education space. Then there are those who will get a diagnosis but reject it. It doesn't sit well with them, and they will rather go with they will outgrow whatever it is. It's a type of thing they will outgrow. So let me put them in school, let them socialize. And I think we've talked about this on the show quite a bit. And even that's the general, I think, idea for most parents, that if I put the child in school, they will socialize, they will learn from their peers, and they will outgrow whatever it is. And that is fine, because I think some schools, well, most schools now know in Kampala. I'll speak about the metropolitan area.
Yeah.
Let's not go across the country, because I don't know. I'm not able to speak for that. But I think in Kampala, most schools now know the word autism. They may not fully understand it, but they know. And so I think schools will gladly take in their children, especially after COVID. They'll take in their children. I think it then starts to fall apart, because every child is different, very different, in the way they'll present, in the way they'll behave. And then it falls apart because the schools are not equipped. And I think that's the general finding, that they are not equipped to handle how the children present, or even to provide what is necessary at that point, which is intervention, early intervention. And early intervention has got to be continuous, repetitive for a sustained amount of time, good amount of time. But in these early intervention centers, that's not what they're doing. Most of our education institutions are not holistic. They are driven by goals, scores. At the end, the objective at 11, 12, what will a child get? So they're not educating a holistic child.
Yes.
So it falls apart at that stage. You put your child in this environment, they might get by because they are young and they're little, but by age 6, the gap it's starting to yawn now between the neurotypicals and those with the challenges. And I think now that's when the parents come back to themselves. I tried it for 3 years, they were in this school, and then maybe some will blame the school not owning their part. So I think there's a growing understanding that there's this condition, but not what roles they have to play. And as we're talking about advocacy, I think it's very important that, yes, they are the advocates, the people, the professionals who talk about it, but even parents, once the child has been diagnosed or you sense there's a difference, I think a parent has to step up and become an advocate as well in the school, educate the school.
Yes.
What is also happening is parents are enrolling children without telling the school. So on the day you enroll, the child doesn't tantrum, doesn't what, they appear normal. So that a school takes on the child thinking they're like everybody else. Then lo and behold, one day the child has a meltdown or is isming or stimming, and they're like, we can't handle the child. You were not upfront with the school. So I think there's a lot of cases of that. So children are being turned away. Parents will blame the system. Oh, they didn't understand that, but you were not upfront. So we need to, I think parents need to get to that stage of owning it and then advocating in whatever space it is. Is it church? Is it the school? Is it your home area? is it the neighborhood? Is it your family? We are not doing enough of that, I think. So we get the knowledge and hold it close. So when you say autism, more people think they know it, but they've not lived it. So it's you, I think, as parents, we need to advocate for the children. I think that's what I would say. Spreading it to the country, I cannot speak, but if we're struggling in our metropolitan areas,
then how is it?
Yes, I fear to imagine what it's like.
I think from what you've said, I think it's safe for us to assert that we still have a lot of work to do as a whole country, because as a community and as a central part of the country right now, we've only gotten the basics of it, and we haven't fully grasped the whole, subject of autism. And it's so interesting, while you were saying all of that, it occurred to me that while we are here talking about access to education and all of that, the simple translation I can get from all of that is that access to education means, for someone who has autism, means putting them in the right place. And not necessarily just throwing them into an educational institution, but what is the place where they can actually be equipped well. And that's what we've been talking about, I think, in all of our shows. We've been encouraging you to take your children to special needs education centers, or just centers, people who are going to look at the holistic development of a child who has special needs or has autism in particular. And so I thank you for bringing that up. Sometimes denial looks like you take your child to a neurotypical school and you're hoping that everything will disappear, but it's a disservice to the child, because the earlier we begin with these interventions and therapies and all these things, the better for the child, and the quicker they develop and move along. So I'll move on to you, Irene, in terms of advocacy as a parent. I know you have a lot of experience. You have a whole group of parents that you are acquainted with that do advocacy. Could you just share with us a few things that you have seen happen over the years, and how that has maybe increased your knowledge on autism, or maybe even helped with furthering the subject in the community?
Yeah, so I started off with a support group. Remember, coming from the church setting, and it's from that support group that I got to learn quite a bit, and I also got to learn that everyone's child was unique and different. And I remember back then we used to even have like charity walks to just create that awareness. That's how we started. We started with a charity walk where we marched and then had a gathering. And in that gathering, we had other parents who had come through. And that is where I was actually surprised to meet a parent who had a 40-year-old and had raised
40.
Wow.
Yes.
In this our Uganda?
Yes, in our Uganda.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So he told us about how he had raised his son, and he had even built a home for the son and got him a wife, and they had a family. And
real?
Yes. And they set up like a farm or something for the child.
That for us, because what did this marriage look like?
Well, I didn't get so much into the detail, but he was sharing his story, his experience of how he had raised his son, and how he had kept him close and taken him into learning life skills like farming and things of that kind. And this was a 40-year-old, he was an adult, and that really raised hope for many other people there. Because at that time, our children were young. Yeah? And at that time, you haven't yet thought about what will my son be
You haven't projected.
at 40. And then here you see this person is living a life and has lived a full life. Yes, so that creates hope. And I feel there's power in these support groups because everybody has a little piece of the puzzle to share. And those pieces will fit quite a bit because you'll have so many questions and you'll have answers from different parents. And just like we say autism is a spectrum, I think also the parents are on a spectrum
That's
of
yes,
sorts.
yeah.
Because one is at a point of just learning about it, another one is just coming to accept it, another one is in denial. So there are different breeds
I think
of parents.
stages to the whole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So bringing these groups together helps. If, say, maybe you've advanced and somebody is still at stage one, it will remind you of where you were. And it will also encourage you to see how far you've gone. And likewise, the one who is seeing how far you've gone is also encouraged to get to where you are. So there is so much power in support groups and speaking to each other and knowing that you cannot do this on your own. So I think we really, really need to embrace this, and we need to keep speaking about it, because your story may touch somebody else, while another person's story may also help you in something you may be struggling with. Yeah.
If I may, Patricia, I just want to add on. I think you've not to hog the light, but you talked about then you were physically meeting and doing things. But I think
Yes.
now in this day and age, with social media, there are a lot of groups that have formed up on different platforms. And I think now with WhatsApp, there are many groups, and that's another route for advocacy on these
Yes.
groups. I think when people are getting diagnosed, I've seen you do it, I've seen Patricia do it, but you're not forgetting to mention it. You encourage these parents to
Yes.
get onto these WhatsApp groups.
Yes.
And what I like about those groups is you can remain anonymous and yet learn. I've seen
Yes.
parents come on there and say, oh my God, when somebody shares, then they come out and say, hey, this has helped me. But you see, it allows you, people who are in denial, to realize it's not only you for starters. There's a whole other community of people. And like you've said, they're across a spectrum, and you can reach out, you can sidebar, you can DM somebody and say,
Yes.
you talked about this. Did you say your child is 18? And I think that's coming out. Or somebody can see a problem and reach out. I've reached out to parents as well on some of these groups when I see there's something I can address privately, and I'll say, would you like to talk? Would you want to just come and have a consult, a free consult? Because I do that. We do that at the center. The first consult is free, up to an hour. Come sit and let's have a chat and let somebody hear you out. And sometimes these have come off the group. When we see they're struggling, we think, let's reach out to this person and talk to them and support them in that way.
And I actually feel before you even begin working on the child,
Yes.
you need to work on the
Yes.
parent.
Yes.
Because you need that parent in the right
Yes,
place
yes.
to be able to support that child. Because that parent has to be an advocate for the child. So it's pointless, in all honesty, it's pointless for your child to be taken to a center when you, the parent, hasn't yet reached that point of acceptance and is not ready to work with the center.
So you can't. Well, for sure, one thing I agree with you both on is the fact that you cannot parent a child with special needs in a bubble. You need a community, and I've always said that that's our biggest advantage as people in Africa, the fact that we have such a large support group. And I just want to shine a light on all the parents that constantly share their experiences, whether in these WhatsApp groups, on other social media platforms, the guests we've had on the show, all these people, the practitioners, therapists, the Claires of this world, and Irene as well, people who are not afraid to share what they have experienced. You have definitely played a huge role in advocacy, and it also means that we heal each other and we heal ourselves in this advocacy, should I say fight, or and really we're just here to encourage you and to appreciate you for all the effort that you put in. We were talking earlier and we talked about how parents should be encouraged to share, not just because you have a child that has been on the spectrum for 40 years or 28 years, even those who have had children, who have children that are just 4 years old or 3 years old, sometimes God blesses you with wisdom and you're able to deal with something that somebody with a 28-year-old child has not yet dealt with. So please feel free to engage with us. Continue to send us all your comments and questions, and also advocate out there. Share these episodes, the episodes that we've shot before this. They bless people and they tell people more about this autism thing that we are so passionate about. And please go out there and be the advocate that you want others to be to you. Thank you so much for joining us today on this special episode. Please like, subscribe to our content. We hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.